The legends were real. The stories were wilder. And now it's time to talk about it. This is Wrestling Real Talk. And now your hosts, A.T. Huck and Rude Boy.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Ooh, it's Wrestling Real Talk. Oh, I hope we don't get striked for using that Jackson's right there. But, you know, I've had a resurgence of Michael Jackson over lately, and I'm going to tell you all about it a little bit later. But right now, I would like to introduce to you my tag team partner, my homie for life, the one and only legend, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. A.T. Huck. What's up?
What's happening, Rudy? Yeah, I've been noticing you showing a little love to Michael Jackson lately.
Man,
I did pay attention, but I just thought it was nothing.
You know, I've really done a lot of research on Michael Jackson and the whole child molestation thing. And me personally, I don't believe that he molested anyone. However, that doesn't not take away that he's a fucking weirdo as a 40-year-old man laying in bed with young children.
Oh, for sure, man. He was inappropriate.
However,
yes, he was.
We also don't know how a man like that was even brought into this world.
Right.
He was
He's
not
phenomenal.
human, bro.
He was phenomenal.
He couldn't go nowhere. He couldn't be.
I've been watching a lot of him too lately, and that performance, was it from Bucharest?
Yeah.
And he comes up off the stage and he just stands there for like 3 minutes, it seems, not moving, maybe moving once.
Mm-hmm.
And the crowd's just going nuts, and he's in the same position, and the crowd is just going crazy.
Yeah, it's
Girls
legendary.
Screaming, falling over each other, guys.
But, you know, like you said, so I went back into the catalog and I started listening, and I was like, man, Michael Jackson was really good.
Mm-hmm.
He was really good, and so much good that it inspired me to go to the powers that be over at Cruising the Barrio, and I went amongst the leaders of Cruising the Barrio, including yourself, and I walked in there and I came to you guys and I said, we must do Michael Jackson versus Prince again. We must do it, and we must do it at Painted Lady. And I threw out the idea for the date. We're waiting for confirmation, and once we get that, it's going down. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I'm going to be ready, man, because, you know, I love Michael Jackson and Prince.
Yes, absolutely. Now, this is a wrestling show.
Yes, it is.
Let's
get back to Wrestling Real Talk.
Absolutely. Wrestling Real Talk. We'd like to thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget to check out our sponsor. That's right. Of course, I'm talking about Taqueria El Rey, and that is at 3400 Bagley in Southwest Detroit. It's like 2 blocks south of the Ambassador Bridge. So right there in the heart of Mexican town. Go over there, get you some good chicken, get you some good tacos. Tell Danny and the crew we said we love them, and thanks for their sponsorship.
Great food, great food.
Now, that reminds me, June the 8th, International Big Time Wrestling returns home to Taqueria El Rey on Sunday, June 8th, starting time 4 p.m. bell time. And we are coming back with a dynamite show, which also includes our annual Hall of Fame. And we have some really cool inductions that we are going to be telling you about throughout the weeks right here on Wrestling Real Talk. But, hey, look, we might as well tell you right now that the first inductee has been with International Big Time Wrestling since day one in 2007 at the Palomino. And he's ridden this roller coaster with us, highs and lows. And he is truly someone who is loved by all the fans. He is someone who is one of my favorite feuds I ever had. We made a lot of money together. Of course, I must be talking about the hardcore hillbilly himself, Mr. Big Chuck Wagon, man.
Oh wow, Chuck Wagon! I didn't know.
Yes, we're gonna honor the man, and I'm all about giving people their flowers while they're here.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, Chuck's a great guy, man. Always funny, always joking. I've never seen him in a bad mood.
it's true. He comes with good intentions, and he comes with a good, like you said, a good energy around him, so people around him feel
and the kids,
comfortable.
And the kids love him.
Oh, they do. Oh man, that's their favorite.
Mm-hmm.
When he comes through. So it's going to be awesome. Make sure you get your tickets. Tickets will be going on sale within the next week or two, Carlito. Yeah. Okay, so you'll be able to pick those up at Taqueria El Rey, and we'll give you all that information as well coming up in the next couple weeks right here on Wrestling Real Talk. So today's topic on Wrestling Real Talk is our top 5 each of the greatest bad guy heels in wrestling.
Now, Rudy, I know we're going to duplicate this.
We
right
might.
off
We
the
might,
bat.
Rabbit. We might.
Right off the bat, so we might as well get it out the way.
Well, the Sheik's already.
That's what I'm talking
You know,
about. Without saying anything else, the Sheik.
Exactly.
And I didn't say the original Sheik. I said the Sheik.
Not
the Iron Sheik. The Sheik from Syria. The wild man from Syria.
Absolutely.
What, 14-time United States heavyweight champion?
Heavyweight champion, oh, yes. And not only that, one of the great innovators of hardcore wrestling.
Right. I think he, would probably be credited for, like you said, ushering in hardcore wrestling. Even though there were some wild and crazy guys before the Sheik took it to a new level.
Absolutely.
Of brutality never seen before at Cobo Arena. He would carve people up. I mean, throw fire, use wood, anything in his possession, he would use it.
Man, seeing him gouge a pencil
into somebody's eye.
Oh, my God.
Or in their nostril. Or in the side of their mouth.
Yes.
Or in their arm.
Oh, gosh, man.
And bite.
The Sheik was an amazing heel, and guess what? He didn't even have to talk, and he was the biggest bad guy in the world.
Never said a legible sounding word ever, even in Arabic.
Right.
It was just the Sheik's own language.
It was some gibberish he was saying.
Yeah, but you understood. You knew, hey, that's the Sheik.
Right, and you knew you were going to get fucked up if you got in his way.
Oh, yeah. Man, I saw him pin Bobo Brazil by wrapping a hanger around his neck.
Oh, my God, man.
A coat hanger.
And what about when he goes over to Japan, man? And,
man, he's exalted.
And
the
people are
Sheik.
spreading like
They're
roaches,
running
man.
from him, This wild, crazy, gray-haired man.
Right. This
with his
grandpa.
head all carved up, saying things that nobody understands what he's saying.
One of my favorite
swinging
times.
a sword.
One of my favorite times is when we went to Indiana. Me, you, Sweet Daddy,
Joe
Bruce, Violent J.
Frantic Frank was there.
Frantic
Frank was there. That's
we
right.
all went to eat with Sheik.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the waitress was like terrified looking at his forehead and shit.
Right.
And he's like, "Hey, do you give free refills and on sodas?" And she was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "All right, I'll take the fucking free refill." I'm like, "Oh my God, man."
That's crazy. I sat next to him.
And
he ordered fried chicken.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted honey on his chicken. And he offered me some of his honey chicken. I was like, oh, man, it's so cool. The Sheik.
Right.
I mean, he talked to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not just then, but, and Sabu was quiet.
Right.
Malcolm acted like he was scared.
Didn't
he? He didn't really want to say too much.
He hardly said anything at that
I'm
dinner.
sitting talking with the Sheik, and they're just sitting there like dumbfounded.
And we're asking him questions and stuff, which was great, you know. And I mean that
he embraced us.
What a great memory of a man who was so feared.
Right.
And I like I've told this story a million times, but it deserves to be told 1,000,001. Going to see the Sheik on his deathbed.
Yeah,
when he summons me out there. And John Pee Wee Moore, who I never got along with, by the way. Let me put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
I owe that kid a debt to society because he was the one who came and said, Sheik would like to see you, Rudy.
Oh,
And at the
wow.
time, I had some car troubles, and he was like, I'll drive you. And he drove me the hour out to Williamson. And I remember walking in the house, and there was New York Raymond.
New York Raymond,
And
right?
there
His
was-
driver is like
Yes.
his sidekick.
And then on the couch was Captain Ed George. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going through my youth right here in this house. And then there's Miss Joyce Farhead, who was
Oh,
such a
my God.
lovely lady, great woman. And then she said,
How'd you keep it together? Man?
oh man, I just was like, it felt surreal.
Yeah, in shock.
And then when I went into Sheik's bedroom, he was laid up on this bed like the king he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he deserved to be laid up like that. Pillowy covers around him. And but those eyes were still there. That was
Oh, my
still
God.
those eyes. And he said, sit down. So I sat
About
down.
to make me cry, man.
And
Go ahead.
we talked for 2 hours. And Miss Farhead, she made kibi. And so we ate that, and I said, Sheik, I gotta go. It's getting late. At this point, it was 2 in the morning.
He was just waiting.
He was just waiting, and he says, thank you for coming. Everyone else forgot me. And I said, Sheik, no one forgot you, man. This just life is crazy, man. And I says, but hey, man, I got here.
Mm-hmm.
And he started laughing. He was like, you're going to come back, right? I said, I promise you I will.
Yeah.
And he gave me his number. He wrote it down. And it looks like a toddler wrote it
Mm.
because he was so fragile.
Yeah, yeah.
And I still have that number.
You still
I
have
still
it. I was
have
about
it.
to ask you that.
And he said, call me, please. Call me anytime.
Mm-hmm.
And I called him once before he died. And I didn't know I was saying goodbye to my old friend and hero. But it turns out that's what happened.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, of course, great minds think alike because, of course, we had the Sheik on our list.
Right, right.
Now,
How can we even go past that segment right there, man? That's almost like the end of the show. But
well, we're just getting
we're
started,
just getting
you see,
started.
because that's what we
But
do
the
right
Sheik-
here
the Sheik
on
meant
Wrestling
so
Real
much
Talk.
to us,
Yes, it's true.
So it's appropriate for us to talk long and deep about the Sheik.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Mhm.
There will come a time where we'll come across certain wrestlers or people that were involved in the wrestling business that we will give a little bit of extra love to because, hey, they gave us that same
Right.
love back.
So many Sheik stories coming.
Yes. And if you think Sheik stories is all we got, wait till you hear these Sweet Daddy stories. Okay, back to those heels.
Okay, so whose turn is it? Because we both picked the Sheik.
Well, age
So-
before beauty, homie.
All right. Greatest heels. I'm gonna have to say, and probably the greatest wrestler of all time to me is Ric Flair.
The Nature Boy.
Nature Boy Ric Flair. I'd have to put him up there as one of the greatest of all time.
Now, okay, then now, just like we said about wrestlers in the past, everyone goes through their period. What was that period of Ric Flair that you just absolutely said, this guy's the shit?
Oh, when I first saw him.
Really?
Yeah, 1980 in Georgia Championship Wrestling was the first time I ever saw it and the first time I ever remember even hearing about Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Until I got down there. Even though they had all the wrestling magazines, on the shelves back then, I don't remember Ric Flair until I saw him on Georgia Championship. But right off, the long blonde hair, his promos, his suits, the world heavyweight champion, just the way he would rattle off everything he had to say. And the dirtiest player in the game, I saw him win so many matches by putting his feet on the ropes.
Absolutely.
Holding the tights.
Let me ask you something. As a Ric Flair fan, and I am also a Ric Flair fan, However, what are your thoughts on like the path that he's went down, where he's an embarrassment to himself, especially on one of the biggest nights of his career, where his son-in-law put up a whole lot of money to have that night for Ric Flair, and he came out drunk the way he did, and it was a fucking embarrassment.
It was horrible, man. I have to admit, I was like, I even asked Scott D'Amore, I was like, was he drunk? What was going on? And Scott kayfabed me. He said, no, he's just old. And I was like, no, it had to be more than that.
Of course. Of course. We know. We're drinkers.
Yeah, but that was pretty bad. I was expecting more out of it.
Yeah.
And it was like, what am I watching?
Right.
So that Flair and the Flair that I first saw in Georgia Championship Wrestling in 1980 are worlds apart. Not even the same animal.
Agreed. I agree 1,000%. So that brings me over to my favorite heel. My favorite heel ain't even a wrestler. He's not even a wrestler. But I'll tell you what, he sure is one of the baddest men in all of professional wrestling. He is a historian of wrestling. He also has the most successful podcast in all of podcast for wrestling right now. Of course, I'm talking about the great Jim Cornette. And Jim Cornette was a guy who got heat from day one when he stepped into that studio in Memphis, Tennessee, and Mr. Jerry Jarrett gave him the opportunity for him to be this spoiled rich kid. And he took that by the balls, and some 50 years later is one of the greatest human beings in all of wrestling. Your thoughts on him as a heel?
Cornette. Hey, I love Jim Cornette, man. I saw him way back when, when he, had his tennis racket that his mother gave him, and he was a mama's boy, and I saw him with the Midnight Express. And, man, Jim Cornette was he got the heat.
He really did.
Because they stood around and didn't say a word. You never heard Bobby talk, Dennis talk, Stan talk. It was all Bobby,
They didn't have to.
It was all Cornette.
They didn't have to. And Jim Cornette was also a guy who would take one on the chin for the business. And actually fall off of a scaffold and break both of his legs.
I saw that happen, fell off the scaffold, and I think he broke his leg maybe.
Both of them.
Man, that's a lot of weight coming down.
Yeah, on both kneecaps. My goodness, man. But Jim Cornette continues to love and cherish this wrestling business. And sometimes he's a little bit out there on his views.
Yeah, he doesn't care anymore. This is a different Jim Cornette than you saw with the Midnight Express.
Absolutely.
This is the real Jim Cornette that you see.
I agree with that 100%. And I can't even believe, as a wrestling fan, and I couldn't stand Jim Cornette, and that's why I knew he was doing his job so well. However, I couldn't believe now as an adult I share the same political views as Jim Cornette. That blows my mind. It blows my mind. Shout out to Jim Cornette and Brian Last over there at the Jim Cornette Experience.
Oh, but I got to bring it up since this is Wrestling Real Talk.
Yes,
Jim Cornette was here last at Cobalt.
Yes, with Santino.
For XICW, and I was there. I witnessed the whole thing when Jim Cornette is walking down the hallway and Santino approaches him. And they get into an altercation. It was all over the internet, but I was right there and saw it, and it was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy, because years ago, Cornette slapped him.
He slapped the shit out of him.
Slapped the shit out of him. Whether he needed to be slapped or not, I can't really say.
I was going to say that might have been a little bit much.
Too far.
Right.
But Jim Cornette is hot like that.
But as a man, he didn't do nothing back.
No, back then he didn't. But later on now, he was ready.
Right. Right.
But many years later.
Right. And like I was just about to say, and at that point, Jim Cornette now is a senior citizen.
Exactly. And this was, 5 years ago or a little longer?
About 5.
About 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'd say about that.
So I saw that. And it was pretty hot for a minute, don't you think?
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And, but I'm glad to say that there are still historians that are still around, like Jim Cornette,
Yes.
for this wrestling business.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, he did a great job in the movie The Queen of the Ring.
Yet to see it.
He
I
did a
have to
great
watch
job,
that.
man. Great job.
Might watch that tonight.
That's a good idea, I promise you. Okay, Huck, now.
But now, since you said Jim Cornette, so
yes, sir.
I'm not changing, but I do have one very similar to Jim Cornette. He's a non-wrestler, but his impact on professional wrestling goes far beyond what most of us can imagine. This guy came in as a kid and pretty much snuck into Madison Square Garden, for lack of a better way to tell the story, and got to know the guys in the business and started taking pictures. Then later on, got to be a manager of some of the greatest tag teams in professional wrestling, like the Midnight Express. He went to AWA as a manager, and he emulated himself after an actor, Paul Dangerously. And this was Paul E. Dangerously, Paul Heyman. But
he emulated himself after a character, not a actor. It was from the movie Johnny Dangerously.
Right?
Yes,
but
who was
the
played
actor,
by Michael Keaton.
Played by Michael Keaton.
Yes.
But
great movie.
But he just evolved through the years,
right?
From being that character to dropping that later on in ECW and just using his name as Paul Heyman. And Paul Heyman to this day, and he's different than he was in ECW, but man, the wise man.
Yes.
With Roman Reigns. Look how far Paul Heyman and the impact that he's had throughout the years with Steve Austin.
Amen.
And, I guess these wouldn't be heel things.
Right.
But the greatness that Paul Heyman has become, he's legendary. He's I don't want to say God.
Right.
But Paul Heyman is a genius.
He truly is.
To pull off what he's pulled off for all these years with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline and ECW and everybody that was involved in ECW.
Including yourself.
Including myself.
So when's he going to pay you?
You know what?
That fucker owes you money,
that
bro.
That used to be a problem with me because I think they owed me for like 18 shows.
Oh, my God, Huck.
And I was getting $100. And sometimes we would get a draw, of $50 or something like that. But I think they owed me for like about 18 shows.
Jesus.
So I get a FedEx after going back and forth trying to get some money. And Tommy Dreamer sent me on Christmas Day $50.
What a dick move, man. What a dick move. Fuck you, Tommy Dreamer.
I know he's going to remember that.
Fuck
if he
that,
hears this,
bro.
it's the truth.
I hope he hears
No offense,
it.
and I'm not mad now, but that's something that
That's
happened.
whack, bro.
That's something that happened. But looking back on retrospect, the experience that I had in ECW, they can have the money.
Well, I got news for you, man.
know what
You
I
went
mean?
through the best university there was.
Yeah.
You actually helped change wrestling forever, man.
Yeah.
And by being there at ECW,
Right.
Well, that brings me to my heel, my bad guy.
How many was that, 2?
Huh?
We've had 2 so far?
Oh, bro. Man, you and those jazz cigarettes, man.
Well,
I'm telling you.
How many have we had so far?
Well, we say Ric Flair.
Well, the Sheik.
And Paul Dangerously.
Right. That's 3. Okay.
So, now this brings me to my guy, who happens to be a girl. That's right. One of the biggest heels that I had ever witnessed, and one of the best matches that I have ever witnessed, was at Cobo Arena in 1986, and it was the Fabulous Moolah, and she went against Judy Martin, and the Fabulous Moolah had so much fucking heat. To this day, I still can vividly remember this match. and she was just getting her ass handed to her by Judy Martin.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, man, she started doing the foot on the ropes deals and stuff.
Choking. She was she was rough.
And all of Cobo Arena was cheering and booing at the right spots. And it was one of those things where I was like, because I wasn't really into women wrestling back then and stuff, but I remember sitting there and I remember clearly my dad just like, this is a good wrestling match. And it was. And ever since then, I would watch Moolah whenever she'd be on TV and stuff. And I was like, I can't stand this lady. I can't stand her. And why? Because she was doing what she was supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
man.
she was evil.
Any thoughts on Moolah?
You know what? Behind the scenes, they say Moolah was a biatch.
Oh, yes. Ooh,
Yeah, she didn't treat the other women very well. You know, try to take their money. I heard
Pimping them out.
Pimping them out. You know, just some crazy shit. She was in control of the women's world championship for years.
Yes.
For years, she was actually in control of the championship.
Yes, yeah.
You know, so it's like, what do you mean? So no other women organization was able to call themselves world champion?
Right. Isn't that bananas?
Right.
That's bananas.
And they bowed down
man.
to Moolah.
Right.
You know?
And there were some good women wrestlers back then. You know, you had Medusa, Medusa Michelli. She was great, man. You know,
Leilani Kai,
Wendy Richter, Leilani Kai,
Rockin' Robin.
Rock. I forgot about Rockin' Robin.
Candy Divine. Did you say Candy Divine?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
But her daughter also wrestled. What the hell was her name? Misty Blue. Misty Blue Sims.
I forgot about Misty Blue Slims.
Yep, that's right. So, anyways, now it is your turn, my friend, for your final two.
Final two? I got two more. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Terry Funk.
Terry Funk. See, I'd never pictured Terry Funk as a heel.
Yeah, Terry Funk was a huge heel, man, in Florida. You know, against the Briscoes. Dory Funk. He broke Dory Funk's leg. You know, down in Florida. I mean, the thing with Ric Flair, pile driving him on the table after that match in Memphis with
they
Ricky
put
Steamboat.
the plastic bag over his head.
Oh, and that was a different match. You know, where he put the plastic bag over Ric Flair's head.
Yeah.
But this one, Ric Flair just went to this great match with Ricky Steamboat, won the title back, and he's in the ring with Jim Ross, I believe. And Terry Funk gets in the ring. He was a judge that night, has the tuxedo on. And he confronts Flair.
Well, you were over there playing Hollywood.
Right. I was just joking, Rick. And then he just lays into Ric Flair and beats the shit out of him.
He sure did. I do
Puts him
remember
on the table,
that.
pile drive. The table didn't break, but it still looked good because the way it collapsed.
Right.
And the way they sold it.
Right.
You know what I mean? They didn't treat it like they fucked up.
Right.
Man, but that just that brought Terry Funk back because he had been gone for years.
Oh, yeah.
You know, on different TV shows and, you know, Paradise Alley, you know, with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, he was doing big things,
yeah,
man.
But as far as a heel, man, Terry Funk was a huge heel.
I know he was a heel, but when I have thoughts of Terry Funk.
The match with Jerry Lawler
in
Memphis, the empty arena
match.
Yeah, Terry Funk was insane.
That was crazy, man. They tore the house down.
Middle-aged and crazy, man.
I love Terry Funk,
Puerto Rico,
man.
He was, you know, Carlos Colon.
I was blessed to share the ring with him and Dusty Rhodes and yourself.
Me too.
And Terry Funk will always be one of the greatest champions of all time.
Right.
He will always be one of the greatest wrestlers to ever step into the ring. When you speak of greatness, you say Ric Flair, and you know, in that same breath, you may want to say Terry Funk.
Oh yeah. Terry Funk is definitely a GOAT. He's definitely a GOAT.
1,000%.
And you know, later on, after his crazy years were in the 70s. And 80s, but once he got to ECW, they loved Terry Funk, and he was no longer the bad guy. You know, he was the wild and crazy Terry Funk, but you loved him.
Absolutely.
You know, taking risks. He started moonsaulting. You know, but yeah, Terry Funk when he was a bad guy, so to speak, was nuts.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, well that brings me now down to one of my 2 finals right here. So if you are ready, I'm going to tell you this man right here was such a heel. And he was one of the guys that I'm most proud of that I got to spend in the ring with. And we had his very last ever dog collar match at the Gathering of the Juggalos. And of course, I'm talking about the former Intercontinental Champion, Mr. Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Greg Valentine, okay.
Now Valentine could get heat just by walking to the ring, man.
Yeah, he was one tough customer, man. He was like a fire plug.
Right,
these huge traps, not a muscle body, but the epitome of what a wrestling body should look like.
Absolutely.
That was Greg Valentine, second generation wrestler.
Johnny Valentine's son.
Johnny Valentine's son, man. Johnny Valentine was a motherfucker, man.
Oh, yeah, man.
Now Greg was a chip off the old block.
He was, and so much that after he went up and worked out with Stu, Johnny said, all right, I'm sending you to the Sheik.
Right.
And that catapulted him to excellence, because then he went down to Georgia.
Well, when I first saw him, he was
Babyface Nelson.
Babyface Nelson. Yeah. In Detroit, and he had that little baby face too.
He did.
Babyface
He sure
Nelson.
did.
Then he was a Fargo. He was one of the Fargos.
He
was
sure
Don Fargo.
was. He sure was.
And he didn't wrestle as Greg Valentine in Detroit for the Sheik.
Mm-hmm.
He was never Greg Valentine.
Right.
Unless it was years later in the late 80s or something.
Maybe if they did something up in Escanaba.
Yeah, somewhere like that. But I don't think at Cobo.
No, I don't recall.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to say this about Greg Valentine is that, like I said, the heat that he would get just by showing up into the ring. And he could do things to the crowd that would piss you off so bad.
Broke Wahoo's leg.
Remember,
he would wear the shirt. I broke Wahoo's leg.
I was just bringing that up. I swear I was. And he was one of those guys I was happy that I got to share the ring with, like I said. And I'm glad that I was one of the last promoters that he actually wrestled for when he wrestled Mr. Bobby Fulton for International Big Time Wrestling.
For that.
You sure were. You were the special guest referee. And they had a nice little match, man.
Yeah, Bobby Fulton was tripping, but it's like, what is he doing? But me and Greg were looking at each other because Bobby just kept motioning on his forehead like he was gigging himself. But he wasn't. He was just doing this. Like he's scraping across his forehead. Me and Greg looked at each other like, what the fuck is he doing? And he just started working him over again. He was tripping.
Yeah. I mean,
what is he doing?
He had just came from wrestling for up in Port Huron. Mm-hmm. He was wrestling up there, and so he came to wrestle for us the next night or afternoon. And I was like, okay, this guy is having a good time.
Yeah.
And you know what? He did have a good time. And they came in and they did a good match. And I'm proud to say that
I enjoyed it.
We put on that Legends match, and I'm proud of it. I truly
actually, speaking of Greg Valentine still, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I had the opportunity to referee him and Hacksaw Butch Reed for the Midwest Heavyweight Championship. It's on Rock's TV.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it on Rock's, not Rock's TV,
Throwdown
Theater.
Throwdown Theater.
That match is on there with Greg Valentine for the Midwest Heavyweight Championship.
Is it already on it? Or?
I think it is already on there.
Is it? Okay, yeah. It's already out there. So check it out, ladies and gentlemen. That segues. It's segued into our sponsorship, Throwdown Theater. That's right. Throwdown Theater is where you could find all of your classic wrestling needs, including the exclusive collectible trading cards that you can get absolutely free. By following us, by subscribing to us, you will get all of the news that you need to know where you can get those collectible cards absolutely free. And while you're at it, stop over, check out the catalog of all of the cool t-shirts and merchandise at Throwdown Theater. Check us out because Throwdown Theater is all about legacy and the love of professional wrestling. Now, that brings us back to our final heel for the day. A.T. Huck, take the stage, sir.
Oh boy, the final heel for today, man. I'm so torn because it could be another one of those that's not a wrestler, but
If you have any
has
honorable
wrestled.
mentions, you could say that as well too.
I know, but I'm
without
going to
a
have to
story.
go out on a limb and say, and not in any order. Well, I guess the Sheik was number one, but the other ones are really in order for me. But I'm going to have to say Bobby Heenan, man.
Oh, Bobby Heenan, that's a great choice.
Bobby the Brain Heenan.
That's a great
One of
choice.
the
Bobby
biggest heels
Heenan
in wrestling.
had heat everywhere he went.
Everywhere he
man.
went, man. Nick Bockwinkel, the Blackjacks,
King Kong Bundy, John Studd.
John Studd, Paul Orndorff.
Oh my gosh, man. He was there in the heart of that whole beginning of WrestleManias and all of
he
that
was all
cool
he was
stuff.
all mixed up into that, and then after that, but I mean he was a big part of getting Hulk Hogan over.
Oh yeah.
His feud he sent so many people after Hulk Hogan, Bobby the Brain Heenan after Hulk Hogan, and before that in the AWA.
I remember seeing
know what I
Bobby
mean?
Heenan at Joe Louis Arena, and the match was if Hogan beat Orndorff, then Bobby Heenan had to get in a weasel suit
Right,
and
right,
wrestle
that's
Hogan
right.
for 2 minutes
in the weasel suit.
in the weasel suit, and it was crazy, it was goofy, but it was a cool night
Right.
checking that out. And once again, right when he walked out into the crowd, the place just erupted with boos. I mean, terrible, man.
Oh my
terrible.
goodness. I think on Throwdown Theater there's a match when Bobby Heenan was a wrestler. Him against
Bobo.
Pepper Gomez.
Oh yeah, it was Pepper Gomez. That's
yeah,
right.
but also him teaming with the Sheik against Sailor Art
Thomas
and
and
Dick the
Dick
Bruiser.
Yeah.
No, Bobo Brazil and Dick the Bruiser from Chicago. And
From
you could-
Wrigley Field or
Yes.
something? Yes,
It
that's
was,
right.
It was Bobo Brazil and Dick the Bruiser.
Okay,
And
all right.
you get to see Bobby Heenan as a wrestler, but just notorious bad guy throughout his whole career, even when he was a commentator.
Oh yeah,
you
man, and he could be a jerk, man.
Oh
He
yeah,
could be-
I mean, look, legendary with him and Gorilla Monsoon.
Oh yes,
you know.
oh yes, 100%.
But Bobby Heenan, was up there as one of the greatest heels of all time.
Well, that brings me over.
But any honorable mentions?
Yeah, tell me any honorable mentions. We're not gonna have any stories. Just tell them.
No deep stories. Yes, we are. We're not going to be friends.
Come on,
Abdullah the Butcher.
Abdullah the Butcher, crazy heel. Once again, another guy who didn't have to talk.
No, he didn't have to say a word. He always had a manager, but vicious individual.
Oh, I know.
On the lines of the Sheik.
Oh, I know. I
Team
got
with
the
the
shit
Sheik.
beat out of me from him.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, you were there.
Oh yeah, I do.
And then you were
remember.
there when I kicked out too.
I know, and I got on the phone with Frantic Frank. I was giving commentary over the phone to my boy Frantic Frank as
Shout
Rudy
out
was
to Frank
making his
Young.
comeback against Abdullah the Butcher.
that was down in Columbus, Ohio, right?
Yes, it was.
That was
it
a good-
It
that was a good
That was
night.
awesome.
That was a good night.
But Abby, I always stayed away from him. I was a part of. I booked Abdullah the Butcher versus the Necro Butcher, at the Taylor Sportsplex, and I was kind of, I won't say on screen, active as far as being a part of the matches and stuff a lot.
yeah.
So I knew Abby knew that. So
Yeah.
I stayed away from him because I thought he might try to get me.
Mm-hmm.
Because he might just do that. He might
Of
just
course.
attack everybody.
Of course.
I didn't really know what they called.
Right.
I just put Necro Butcher and Abby and let them do their thing.
Right.
But he ran amok that night, man. They
Mm.
destroyed the concession stand just on purpose.
And weren't told to do it.
No. Abby was taking liberties, man. But
Oh,
it was a
boy.
wild and crazy match. Necro bumped all over the place for him.
Sure.
Then Pondo hit the ring on Abdullah the Butcher.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it was great, man.
I
Great
love
memories.
it, man. I
Great
love it.
memories.
Is that available on video?
I have it. It's on one of those discs.
Okay, well, then that means it'll be on Throwdown
Yeah,
Theater
we have
soon.
to find
so.
it. We have to find it. I might have it at home. It might be on a computer disc. Have I given you any computer discs? A few? Okay. So it might be on those.
So back to Throwdown Theater for just a brief second. Ladies and gentlemen, these videos that you see on Throwdown Theater come from the collections of guys like A.T. Huck, guys like Supermouth Dave Drayson, guys that have preserved all of this history through video. And we're just sharing that video to wrestling fans like yourselves because we want to keep the history of professional wrestling alive.
I just brought over a whole big box of VHS just today.
You see that? So we're gonna
know what's on it.
We're gonna have some cool stuff coming up on Throwdown Theater. Now that's taking me to the mailbag. Well, no, it doesn't. It takes me to my final heel that, for me, just was wow, man. And you're not even gonna believe when I say this, but it's the truth. First, I want to say my honorable mentions. Honorable mention number 1. Chris Carter. Now, you might say, oh, you're just saying that because that's your partner and that's your friend and everything. No, but check this out.
Damn.
Check this out. Buzz Sawyer came to town and wrestled for WWF. And in the back dressing room, Gorilla Monsoon said, okay, Carter, you're going to wrestle Buzz Sawyer. And George Cannon said, man, he's a heel. You putting him over as a babyface? And he was like, no, he's a heel. And he said, George Cannon said, no, he's a heel here. And he was like, no one's going to care who the fuck he is. He's going to work fucking, what's his name?
Yeah, he didn't know who he was.
Right, Buzz Sawyer. So Buzz Sawyer goes to the ring and is trying to generate heat, and no one knows who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Carter walks out of the curtains and just an eruption of boos.
They know who he is. Yeah,
and he
here
came
in Detroit.
Yes, at Cobo Arena, the first time Hogan ever came to town. Carter and Buzz Sawyer go in the back. Buzz Sawyer's pissed because Gorilla Monsoon put him with a heel who's more over than him, right? And George Cannon told Gorilla Monsoon, I told you so. And Gorilla Monsoon said, you absolutely did tell me so, and you were right.
Wow. Great story.
So, yeah, that's one of my honorable mentions. And, of course, that brings me to the heel of all heels for me, personally. And I got to tell you something about this guy. He is the ultimate heel in professional wrestling. Everybody has a hate story about him. And his name is Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And you want to talk about a guy who is hated and who is the biggest heel in all of wrestling? Just ask Bret Hart about what kind of a human being this man is.
I'm going to have to agree with you on this one. You know, I forgot about Vince. You know, I neglected to think about his growth from being the promoter into that character and how it carried the WWE for the longest. The whole McMahon family, you know, it was more than just Vince. You know, it was Shane, it was Stephanie, it was Linda, you know, but Vince, that character, like you said, you know, that he portrayed, you know, was him too.
We didn't know it at the time, but it truly was him.
Right.
I mean, the stories are out there.
I mean, it's even more bizarre than what we really thought back then.
Exactly. You know, because I used to think, wow, man, he's making out with Trish Stratus right in front of his wife.
Right.
I'm like, that's mind-blowing, bro.
Crazy.
But then again, I didn't know he was pooping on chicks' heads either when they was banging them. So.
I didn't know that
allegedly,
until right now.
Allegedly.
I was this age old when I found out.
Allegedly. But anyways,
Thank you for that bit of information, Rudy.
Hey, man, him and John Laurinaitis, allegedly. Allegedly.
Sick freaks.
Brock Lesnar, allegedly.
Sick freak.
Those are all allegations, but they are all in the court documents. They truly are. So this is nothing that I'm breaking stories
So
right here.
he's big on big heel on TV and a big heel in real life.
Yeah, man, and that's sad, man, because he really did change wrestling for the better. He really did.
He did, but man, I hated it at first.
Me too.
I think everybody loved and hated the WWF's expansion.
Absolutely, well, because we were traditionalists.
I mean, all the territories died.
Right.
And it became about the WWF instead of just about wrestling.
Amen.
Even though the NWA was still hanging on and WCW was there, that expansion changed wrestling.
All right. Well, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, you're the winner. Winner, chicken dinner. You win the pony, as my good friend Jim Cornette would say. Now, that brings us to the mailbag, Mr. A.T. Huck, and this one is addressed to you.
It is?
Yes, it is.
From who?
This is from Richard in Madison, Wisconsin. Are you listening?
Well, hello, Richard.
He would like to know, Mr. A.T. Huck, out of your illustrious career, what was the greatest match you ever refereed?
Oh, my God.
Oh, no, now you're not a smartass right now, are you?
I'm not, because I really have to think. The smartass.
Someone got you by the boo-boo, didn't
they? No, they don't. Sabu against Too Cold Scorpio in Lincoln Park.
Oh, that was a beauty, man.
Where the ring
broke.
Not gimmicked.
Mm-mm.
In the middle of a big move off the top, they come down, boom, the ring collapses. They keep going for another 10 minutes at least off the ropes, and the ropes are just hanging, but they're still doing flips and dives off these wobbly ropes.
Now that says a lot about that match. And by the way, thank you, Richard, for that question. And for those of you who would like to ask questions to us or leave a comment or whatever, you can do it below right here in the comments section. Or you can come over to wrestlingquestions@gmail.com. Wrestlingquestion@gmail.com, right? My wrestling question. Okay, sorry. My wrestling question at gmail.com. Those jazz cigarettes.
Let me just go back a little
shout
bit about that, though.
Shout out to the captain, Philly captain out there, who myself and DJ Carlito, we watch all the time, man. Shout out to the captain. Here we are. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right, man. Are you okay?
You would.
Excuse me.
Only those who know.
You made me forget what I was going to say now.
But no, I mean, you've been in there with some great wrestling stars.
Yeah, but anyway, back to that match with Sabu and Too Cold Scorpio, just to backtrack. That was their second time ever meeting. The day before that,
it's true,
was in Hillman, Michigan. Was the first time they ever met each other in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
So that night that the ring broke was their second time ever meeting.
And what a classic!
Tore down.
What a classic, man!
Yeah, that's on that's on Throwdown Theater.
Absolutely.
Yes.
For those of you who want to check that out, make sure you check it out. But right now, that brings us to the end of the show, and we'd like to thank our sponsors: Taqueria El Rey in Southwest Detroit, 3400 Bagley Street, right there between I-75 Service Drive and West Grand Boulevard. Go check them out. Get you some good grub. Also, Throwdown Theater. Check us out on YouTube and all of your awesome places where you find your favorite wrestling videos. And for those of you who join us right here on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube and all those other great places, thank you guys. You could be anywhere in the world, but you decided to roll with me and A.T. Huck, and we don't take that lightly, do we, Huck?
No, we don't. It's always a pleasure, and every time that we do this, I just get more and more involved, and it brings back so many memories. And, man, I have so much I can talk about that I want to talk about, and let's do it, Rudy. Let's go.
Well, you know it. So that just brings us to our slogan. We're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time. Be good to one another. Much love, peace and love from God above.
Peace.